Hello and welcome to one of three parts of the 2018 Political Forum presented by the Rocky Hill Chamber of Commerce. My name is Brian Wazina. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and thank you all for joining us. The Rocky Hill Chamber is proud to present the program that offers information out to our voters. I want to thank all the candidates through the three programs for meeting with us today, and the Rocky Hill Community Television for their use of this great facility. Today we are joined with Representative Matt Lesser, candidate for Connecticut's 9th District in the State of Connecticut Senate. This district covers Rocky Hill, Cromwell, Newington, and parts of Wethersfield and most of Middletown. Matt, thanks for being here today. I'd like to start off by hearing a little bit about you, and can you tell the audience a little bit about your background and why you're here today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Brian, for having me on, and thank you to the Rocky Hill Chamber for all that you do in the community here in Rocky Hill. I live in Middletown with my wife, who's an attorney. I'm a state representative, and I've served for the last few years. When Senator Doyle chose not to seek re-election, I made the decision to run for his old seat. So I'm now the Democratic candidate for state Senate right here in Rocky Hill. I'm serving the legislature as chair of the banking committee. I've done a lot of work on issues like student loans, college affordability, and I'm really excited to go door to door and meet a lot of residents in Rocky Hill and get to know the community.
Thank you. We're going to start off with the questions. I have 6 questions. I'm asking them to all the candidates in the House and Senate that we're interviewing, and they're all going to be the same. So we're just going to start off with the first one. What are the first 3 goals you plan to accomplish if you are elected?
Well, that's a great question, Brian. I think anybody running for the legislature has to focus on the state budget. But in terms of my personal priorities, I think we've got to make sure that we're providing supports to veterans in our community. That means ending veteran homelessness, something that I've really worked hard at as a state representative. We're building 32 units of housing for homeless veterans, where we took an abandoned state building and we're retrofitting it in Middletown right now. And I think we need to do a lot more to support those veterans. We've got to deal with the issue of healthcare, making sure that healthcare is affordable for folks. There is a lot of uncertainty right now. I hear from businesses and from families all across the state who are crying out for help. Other states like Massachusetts are really leading on this, and we can do a lot to make healthcare more affordable. And we've got to protect our environment. You know, I wrote the law keeping toxic fracking waste out of Connecticut, worked across party lines to do that. We've got to do what we can to make sure that the quality of life in this state and the beautiful Connecticut River is preserved going forward, and protecting open space as well. Excellent,
thank you. What do you think about the business climate in your district, and how will you attract and retain businesses in this district?
We've got a lot of work to do. I think when I look at the state, the reason I ran was because of all of the work that we've got to do to rebuild the middle class in this state. You know, we're losing seniors, but we're also young people who grew up in our towns can't afford to stay. So I see a lot of work that we've got to do to make it more affordable to do business in Connecticut. We've got to tackle issues like electric rates on property taxes, make it easier to do business here, and tackle the, I think, critical issue of student debt. Those issues are really, I think, shrinking the middle class in the state and things we can focus on.
Excellent. With the uncertainty of the state budget that may include large cuts in state aid, how would you propose making up the revenue lost from these cuts?
Well, I think that the assumption in that question, I think, is dangerous, because I think that too often the state has balanced its books on the backs of municipalities. What does that mean? That means cuts to education and services here in Rocky Hill and towns in the area. It also means higher and higher and higher property taxes. I think that is a net loser for Connecticut. I think it's really bad for our future to keep on balancing our books on the backs of middle class and small businesses. So my priority in the Senate will be to make sure that that doesn't happen, that we make cuts elsewhere, but we hold towns harmless, and we're making sure that we are fully funding our towns. We're finding ways, creative ways to save costs by promoting regionalism and making sure that no matter what we do, we don't balance the books on the backs of the people who can't afford it.
Excellent. With an ever-increasing need for senior activities and excellent schools to maintain a healthy district, how can you help with funding for these important areas?
Well, you know, we are a rapidly aging state. And we've got to do a lot more to support seniors in our community. That's why I fought to save the Medicare Savings Program. Earlier this year, there was an effort by Republicans and Democrats to cut the funding for the Medicare Savings Program. I thought that was a mistake, and I fought against that. But we have real needs for seniors in this community. That's why the town of Rocky Hill right now is debating building a new senior center. That's why we need to do more to make sure that we're funding transportation for seniors, nutrition for seniors, making it possible for people who lived all their lives in this community, who've paid taxes in this community, to stay here in retirement.
Businesses often talk about the high cost of doing business in the state of Connecticut. Are there any taxes or fees that you think we should eliminate right away? And are you in support of tolls or other fees that will affect the cost of business in Connecticut?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm getting that a lot. I think, first of all, absolutely, there are real taxes and fees that are a problem right now. I mentioned property tax reform and the huge burden that puts on folks. But one of the things that the legislature did last year that I opposed was imposed a new tax on teachers. Just for being a public school teacher, you now have 1% of your salary deducted and used for the general operations of the state of Connecticut. I think that is wrong, and I think we should eliminate that teacher tax. Businesses and homeowners are also now dealing with this bait and switch, where we put a fee on folks to support energy efficiency programs and for renewable energy, and that's a good thing. Unfortunately, that was converted into what's essentially a tax on folks because that money was diverted away from what it was intended to do. That's just the cost of doing business that I think people can't afford. So I think we can do a lot to address those issues. Now, you asked about tolls, and that's a tough issue. But I can tell you that anybody who tells you, any politician who looks at you and assures you that there isn't a transportation funding in this crisis, in the state, is lying to you. We have lost revenue year after year after year as cars are getting more fuel efficient. That's a good thing. Unfortunately, the federal government is also giving us less money to put into roads and bridges and mass transit. And so even though we're getting less money every year, costs go up every single year. So we've got to figure out some way to deal with it. I think tolls are one potential answer, but I want to make sure when people ask me on the street what I'm voting on, then I have a specific answer, what the plan is, how much you're going to have to pay, what roads they're on. And the problem I have right now is that the State Department of Transportation has not presented one single easily digestible plan where people can know, okay, this is what we're talking about. And unfortunately, the conversation keeps shifting between different kinds of plans. So I think we should talk about it. I think we need to find a solution to the transportation funding crisis, but we need a coherent plan we got to look at before we can move forward or backwards. I will say one other thing, because there was an attack on me that just came out that claimed that I supported this $10 million study that's out there. That is absolutely bogus. I do not support that study. I don't think we need $10 million to come up with that plan. I think we could just come up with it within the Department of Transportation using their existing resources.
Thank you. One of the things we hear a lot about from businesses is how hard it is to find good workers. What will you do to help provide education to the workforce, and how will you keep those educated workers from leaving the state of Connecticut?
That's a critical question. That is probably the most important question that we have to answer as a state. We're competing for smart, talented people graduating from high school right here in Rocky Hill, in college, to make sure that they stay in Connecticut, that we have the world-class workforce that we need to sustain our economy. We've got companies all over the place in Connecticut desperate to hire workers. We've got Pratt & Whitney trying to hire thousands of new employees, but we don't have the workforce to support that. And my fear is if we don't train those workers, if we don't have those people here, those companies are going to leave. So what can we do about it? Well, I've already written something called the Student Loan Bill of Rights. It's the first law of its kind anywhere in the country, trying to deal with the cost of college, regulating the student loan industry. Unfortunately, we're in federal court right now battling Betsy DeVos, the U.S. Secretary of Education, who is intervening on behalf of the student loan companies. We've got people all over Rocky Hill, all over the area, who are $100,000 or more in debt. And if you want to be able to buy a home in this area, if you want to be able to start a business or even start a family, it's very difficult to do so deeply in debt. These guys are more interested in maximizing their own profit than they are in helping people get out of debt and helping people get on their feet as productive tax-paying residents. So we got to deal with that. We also need to deal with the cost of college. I'd like to find a way to make community college free. I think we could do that surprisingly easy. Rhode Island and New York, an hour east of here, an hour west of here. have already figured out how to do that. We could do that, and I think that would be a net boom for our economy. And we can't forget how important other options are, like making sure that our VOTEC schools are fairly funded, aren't just a stepchild, that we've got good apprenticeship programs to make sure that people who want to do well in the trades can also find the job skills they need to succeed.
Thank you. That's the 6 questions, and in closing, is there anything that you would like to tell the voters about you or where you're going?
Yeah, no, it's been great, and I'm so glad that you're doing this forum. I think it's so important that the residents of Rocky Hill and all the surrounding towns get a chance to meet the candidates. I've been going door to door for months now, knocking on doors, asking people what issues they care about, and trying to get the input from ordinary residents. I give out my email, I give out my cell phone number, because I really want to hear from people, and it's really important that I represent the community as best as I can. I will say we have a choice to make in the election, and the choice is between 2 different ideas about how to grow the economy. Do we grow the economy from the top down by helping people who are already succeeding get a little bit richer and hope that some of that trickles down to us? Or do we grow the economy by growing the middle class, by helping raise wages, making sure that we're dealing with issues like electric rates, healthcare costs, property taxes, and make it easier for the middle class? I think investing in the middle class is the way we're going to succeed as a state. I think Connecticut's best days are ahead of us, not behind us. I think there's a lot that we need to do, but that's why I'm running for the state senate, to try to make that difference and get Connecticut working for us.
On behalf of the Rocky Hill Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and participating in this event. I would also like to thank everyone working behind the scenes, Mike O'Toole, Henry Vassell, Andy and Dave from Rocky Hill Community TV. And you can find out more information about the Rocky Hill Chamber of Commerce at rhchamber.org. Thank you for watching, and go support a Rocky Hill business today.